Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be reviewing the 2026 horror movie titled Obsession. Obsession is the story about a young man's obsession with his friend Nikki. The young man is named Bear and he's obsessed with his friend Nikki. And like most crushes, he doesn't have the guts to tell her how he feels. And like most people who have crushes, he doesn't have the guts to tell her how he feels. So when he comes across this item in a store that can grant wishes, that promises that it can grant wishes, he buys it and he tries it out on Nikki one night after dropping her off from work. Before he tries it out, he has the opportunity, he almost builds up the courage to tell her how he feels, but he chickens out. And so when she walks into her house, he makes a wish to become the person that she loves the most in the world, and then breaks the stick, because that's the instruction at the back of the item, this magical stick that can grant wishes. So he breaks the stick, and immediately she comes out of her house and starts to talk to him, and he was even weirded out by her, her sudden interest in him and seeking his comfort and all that, but he goes along with it, right? And that is the beginning of her obsession with him. And it reminded me in a lot of ways about these rats. I've forgotten what they're called. I've forgotten what it's called. These microorganisms that can infect rats and get them obsessed with cats. I'm gonna look it up. So I'm gonna look it up quickly. So I'm looking up what is the microorganism that can infect rats and have them obsessed with cats, and it's Toxoplasma gondii. It's a protozoan, single-celled parasitic protozoan. The parasite requires the intestines of a cat. I'm sorry, Jesus, I'm sorry, I just forgot I'm supposed to be reviewing a movie. I've read it before where these rats become so attracted to cats and cats are the natural predators of rats, so it doesn't make sense. The sudden attraction and obsession of Nikki to Bear doesn't make sense at all. At first I was thinking that she might have overheard him make the wish and is just messing with him, but as the movie progressed I realized that she wasn't messing with him, and she was totally obsessed with him. It's like she lost her own autonomy and just became so obsessed with this guy, and that was when it became a true horror, right? That's when the horror of the scenario kicked in, right? Because although the story is told from Bear's point of view, you cannot help but imagine what it would be like to be in Nikki's shoes, where something suddenly takes over you and forces your attraction to some dude. And Bear, even though he knows that this is unnatural, he goes along with it. He has sex with Nikki. He allows her to just be crazy, right? We watch in horror as Nikki loses everything that makes her Nikki. She doesn't go to work. She just wants to stay at home with him. She wants to watch him sleep. And sometimes the most haunting part of the movie were the times where we see the real Nikki pop up and she's screaming because she doesn't understand what's happening. She's screaming, she's losing her mind, and then the obsessed version of her takes over. Watching the struggle between the real Nikki and the obsessed version that Bear conjured is where the real horror, the true horror of the story lies. Of course, the story is told from Bear's point of view, so some viewers find themselves empathizing with him, right? Because she's obsessed, she's not taking showers, she just wants to watch him sleep. So obviously, some people are gonna find empathy for him, but I was not one of those people. I wasn't. It was so horrific watching Nikki lose every aspect of herself. At no point do we see Bear express remorse for taking away someone else's autonomy. At no point do we see Bear express remorse for hijacking another person's mind, for exploiting another person's mind. The only time he feels remorse is when her obsession with him, his imposed obsession on her over him, becomes inconvenient. when she's acting normally, when she's not losing her mind, when she's not peeing herself, because she did, right? She was just like a puppy, like that is waiting for their owner to come back home, right? At some point, she stood in the living room at some point, waiting for him to get back from work. She stopped going to work. She stood in the living room. She didn't shower. She didn't live there. Obsessed with him. In fact, even dogs do not do that, because they have fun when their owners are away sometimes, right? Even though they miss their owner, they might find distractions, but not Nikki. Nikki was standing there at some point, peeing herself, unable to move, waiting until Bear came back from work. And that was when it became inconvenient for him. And that was when we saw him go back to the back of the item he bought and try to call the makers of the stick. And instead of him to ask for, a reversal of the whole thing, we see him asking to modify his wish, right? We see him trying to modify his wish. Bear never expressed remorse for stealing someone else's mind, for exploiting someone else's, violating someone else's mind and body. He never felt remorse. He went back to try to edit it, to modify his wish to the point where she's obsessed with him, but not that obsessed. And the person who picked the call was like, there's no way to alter your wish, right? There's no way to alter your wish. The only way that Nikki gets back to herself is if you die. And because Bear is, a coward, right? He doesn't do that, right? He doesn't do that. He allows Nikki continue being corrupted by this wish of his. He allows her continue to lose her mind until she starts to kill people. Yes, she killed their friend, right? Another friend of theirs that was, I think, Sarah, that kind of liked Beer, right? So obsessed Nikki kills Sarah, and I think one other person, I think their boss at the place they work. And that is when Beer finally gets the courage to take himself out of the picture. Because obviously the whole thing has gotten out of hand, right? And then his death brings about Nikki, brings about the real Nikki. She's returned to her body and she has been left with a shitstorm, right? That's all that can be said. She has been left with a shitstorm. She's obviously not going to be able to explain what happened, and so she's going to be arrested, right? So the movie is such a haunting movie, right? It's not horror in the gory ways, right? Stabby horror. It's not a stabby horror. Of course, there are gory moments where Nikki beats the shit out of Sarah, right, and kills her, basically, right? But the horror of it is just watching another woman's life taken away from her, and at the end of the day, she's still gonna go to prison, obviously, for that. Because who is gonna believe you in that world? Who will believe you when you say, oh, someone else took my mind? She's going to prison. So that's what makes it a very haunting movie, and it is one of my best horrors this year, if not the best horror I've watched this year. It's one of the best horrors I've watched this year. And so that will be all for today's video. If you have loved this review, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.